At the moment, I could buy Mount Auburn Street and turn my take the Phoenix. Welcome to Filmography.
Did you just have a stroke during like your favorite movie of all time? Like saying one of the, I could take one on the street, buy the Phoenix Club, and turn it into my pool room. It's what?
It's ping pong room. I know it's ping pong room.
Sure.
That's the quote. I stuttered a little bit, and then
Welcome to FilmograFeed. Welcome to FilmograFeed. That's Caleb Boatman.
And that is Caleb Koho. We got it right this time. Good.
Yes, we did. Anyway. We're talking about one of, I think this movie's in both our top 10 favorites of all time. So this movie
is it in both of our top fives?
It's not in my top 5. It's in my top 10.
Oh. Slut.
It's close to the top. Listen, my top 5 is it's hard to get locked in my top 5. My top 5 is pretty locked. So
slut.
It's like number 9 or 8 on my list. Maybe 7 at this point.
Slut.
So,
anyway, I think just out of the gate, this movie's a masterpiece. I don't believe in the concept of a perfect movie, but if I did, this would be one of them.
Yes, I agree.
I think that this movie, just every technical element of filmmaking is on display here, and it is just all perfect. Just one of the most expertly made movies of all time, in my opinion.
David Fincher is one of the biggest. I think the person who gets the most credit for this is Aaron Sorkin, who is the only person above the line to get an Oscar for their work on this one. And I think that is very deserved. I think this is his best screenplay. I think it's a perfect script. I believe in the concept of perfect scripts. This is one of probably a handful of 10 scripts that I've ever gotten the chance to necessarily read and then also see in action and say for sure, I think this is a perfect screenplay. I think Sorkin's work here is the best that he's done on film. And that we'll get into an interesting discussion later. Yeah, I think David Fincher deserves a massive amount of the credit for making this movie great. I think this movie is directed like any other Fincher thriller in a way. It feels like a thriller in a way, which is sort of, Fincher's trademark genre of choice for most of his stuff. And he's the master of it. He's meticulous. Every scene feels energetic and perfect and cold. And Jeff Cronenweth is definitely part of that. Is his longtime cinematographer. They don't work together anymore, which is unfortunate. But Cronenweth was nominated for this honestly brutal year. Didn't deserve to win, but a great nomination. Everything looks very cold. The world looks the way that Zuckerberg feels. It's great.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that's the most brilliant thing about this movie is that the film almost feels as though it is reflectant of Zuckerberg. It has this very inhuman, robotic feel to it, which I think to be fair, a lot of Fincher's movies have, and I don't think it necessarily always works for me. Sure. I think because of the subject, it's just so perfect. And it's just because this movie is so meticulous and so brilliant.
Yes. And I do think that has to do, again, I think you're right. This is a lightning in a bottle. Every person who is perfect for the part in the film is in it. I don't think there's a person in this who isn't the absolute correct choice for what they're doing. I think it's I am a huge believer in a lot of the shutting out the below the line people, especially when their work is as good as they are on this. Angus Wall and Kirk Baxter edit the shit out of this.
Yeah,
it's brilliantly made. I love Kirk Baxter as an editor. He's Fincher's longtime editor. He works on basically everything. Kirk Baxter is a fucking god of editing, and I think he does such a good job on this. And Angus Wall is such a great editor with him on it. Those two are together. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross's Oscar-winning score is just so perfect. I think it's absolutely deserving of the win in that year. Suck it, Holtzman, and your dumb How to Train Your Dragon call. And
that is
Scully,
a great. That is
a great year for score, but Scully can also take Hans Zimmer's Inception score and shove it. It's Reznor Ross Social Network all the way to the bank for me in this year. They absolutely earn it. The only score in 2010 that I think is as perfect for its movie, that perfectly captures its characters and its world and its tone and everything it does, is Daft Punk's score for Tron Legacy. And I think, I think it's the only other score in 2010 that is as great. And I think Reznor and Ross have a better score, but Daft
You
Punk's
do
score
not
for Tron
know.
Legacy is
Like, I was with you. I was with you on the Resident and the Rosk and everything you said about Zimmer and Howl and How to Train Your Dragon Inception. And you were
It's
just
just
like,
your first scores.
Daft Punk did a better score than John Powell or Hans Zimmer did. Like, no.
I
no.
genuinely believe that, yes. Here's
If you want to say that
I'm
to
going
the
to ask you.
number
I'm going to
four,
ask you this question.
sure.
No. I want to ask you this question. When is the last time you actually sat down and watched Tron Legacy?
Probably not since I was like 10.
That's exactly right.
Actually,
Because
that's not
I was
probably when I was like
the same
12.
one.
Because
Okay,
like I was
but here's the
weirdly
thing.
obsessed with that movie for a little bit. There's a picture of me dressed as Sam Flynn for Halloween.
You're just dressed like a generic white guy, but okay.
No,
Anyway.
like I have the Tron suit on.
I thought. Okay, when you say Sam Flynn, I thought you meant like when Garrett Hedlund has a leather jacket riding a motorcycle in the beginning of the movie.
No. Like,
Okay.
I mean, I'm dressed as like the I didn't
Tron
want to just call him Tron. Like, what
I mean, yeah. Well, here's you.
I'm dressed as the character of Sam Flynn. I'm not going to say I'm dressed up as Zelda.
Anyway,
if I dress up as Link, like, no.
I would. Sam anyway, the point that I'm making is you haven't seen it in a long time. You haven't heard the score in a long time. I guarantee you, if you gave Tron Legacy a watch, I don't even care if you like the movie. I guarantee you, you watch that movie back, you listen to that score in the context of that movie, and you'll agree with me. That score is
no way
suited to the world the movie it is.
I have been listening to the How to Train Your Dragon for way too much, and I just do not believe that I will put it above that. I honestly could see myself putting it above the Inception score more than I could see the Death.
Okay, fine. Take How to Train Your Dragon out of it. But I'm just saying you will absolutely watch Tron Legacy and absolutely understand that score is, like the movie or not, the score is probably the strongest element of Tron Legacy besides the visual effects. Outside of the clue phase. Like, the visual effects and the score are the things to nominate for Tron Legacy. Anyway, the point of the matter is Reznor and Ross, which we agree, win the Oscar and have the best score of the year, period.
One of the best scores of all time, probably my second favorite Oscar-winning score.
It's a great score. It's in my top 5. I think it's a phenomenal score. It has a very kinetic and, like, it has that, like, loud pace. It sets the pace of the movie as much as the editing does.
I agree. And just those doom, doom, doom. Like, yeah. Like, just such a great...
sounds very cold and monotonous. Just like, everything.
It almost sounds like when you boot up a computer. You know, you get those, or like open up a web page. It has that.
I know that technically it's not like an original piece of music, but their adaptation of what is it? It's the
In the Hall of the Mountain King.
In the Hall of the Mountain King is like all time score adaptation is taking that music piece, implementing their style of the score into it, and putting it's just goated.
I want to talk about that scene because we're gonna bounce around in this one. We're not gonna go piece by piece because I think
we haven't even gotten into the story of how it was made, which is a great story in its own right. But yeah, go ahead.
Fair. I think it's okay if this episode's a little frenetic because I don't think that we really need to deep dive into this movie.
It also fits the movie because this movie's frenetic and we're jumping all over the place just like the movie does.
So that is true. But the thing that I noticed this time that I did not notice before is that is the last time, that in the Hall of the Mountain King and then the subsequent moment after, is really the last time we see the Winklevi. Like, chronologically, it's not the last, but in terms of when we see them, that is the last time we see the Winklevi.
True. And it's kind of it's their breaking point where they're finally like, all right, we're going to sue the nerd. And it's like, and it sets up when we see them earlier in the movie and like their whole thing there. And like, that's it. That's kind of our farewell to them is them basically like agreeing and almost winning in a way.
Well, no, I almost think it's the opposite. I think it kind of shows them almost in a perpetual circle of loss. Like we are seeing them at their lowest moment and they're stuck there. And we never get to see them come back out of it. I think it's really almost like a giant middle finger to those characters.
I guess. I don't know. I don't know if I agree with you because like when we see them next in the movie in terms of timeline order, in the early movie when they're doing the deposition, while Zuckerberg is dunking on them verbally, they're winning the deposition. Like they have all the evidence.
And I'm saying that's before all of this. So the last note that we get of them in the movie is a downbeat. It's them being defeated in the race and
Is it a
being defeated
downbeat?
by Zuckerberg.
Is it really a downbeat? Because they're not defeated, because they resolve themselves in that moment that they're like, finally, we're not holding back. We're gonna
Oh
go get him
shit!
now. What?
I didn't mean to make this live.
Are we live? Live?
Yeah, we're live, and
You
I
know
didn't
what?
mean.
Fuck it. We're live. You're getting the social network live, and you're getting Charlie Wilson's Word tomorrow pre-recorded. It's okay.
All right. I hope Mike's not mad about this. I'm gonna apologize to
It's
him.
fine. It's fine. We'll worry about Mike later. Mike's not too
That's
worried.
fair.
So
Keep
it's all right.
talking. I'm just gonna send him a message.
Anyway, so what I'll say about that scene is, I guess to me, I get what you're saying, but in my sort of take of it is like that moment is the ramp up to their win. It's almost the moment, like I think it's almost the opposite. It's almost the moment where they break that cycle of loss in a way where it's like they are, because the other two have been sitting on their hands because they won't all agree to do this. And finally, the guy is so broken by, he's like, all right, fine, I'm giving in, let's go get him. And they have a moment all together where then like he like hugs, they like hug each other, like, yeah, let's go get him. And like, well, that's the last thing we see earlier in the movie. They are winning the deposition, even though they're getting dunked on. So like we know
Again,
they win.
yeah, but I think the fact that we don't get them back again. We don't get them back again. And their last moment is still like they are humiliated in the Olympics. They're humiliated with Facebook being in Britain. I think it's purposeful in that this is like they are bottom feeders and they are defeated, and even though they win, they don't win. And I think that's what's
I guess that's fair. I just see it as like that last bit where we get is like connecting that back to the beginning, and like it's a moment of actual like joy. Weirdly enough, for Anthony Minghella son, is the only way I know how to say his name. Max Minghella, that's his name.
yeah.
It's like Anthony Minghella's son. Max Minghella, like is like excited about this, and like because they know that, and the other Winklevi is like they know they're gonna win. They have what they need to win. They've just been sitting on their hands for so long, and so like finally they're pushed to like go for it. And I feel like that's, I don't know if I'd call that a loss. I guess to me it's like, all right, they're like finally gonna. But anyway, it's a great scene. I do love the moments immediately before the decision to go where they are being humiliated, where every time he comes up and they're just like really close race. He's like, if one more person tells me that it was a really close race, I'm gonna fucking kill someone.
All right. Now let's backtrack, much like the actual social network. Give us a little background.
All right, I'm gonna take you guys back on a little journey. The year is 2005, 6-ish. Screenwriter Aaron Sorkin is reading an unfinished draft for a book called The Accidental Billionaires because the publisher is shopping it around for an immediate film adaptation because he thinks this book is going to be so good that a movie needs to be made. So we're going to sell it before it's done. Sorkin said it was the first time ever where I got to page 3 and called the author and said, I'll do it. It's the fastest yes he had in his career because, to quote him, the invention itself is as modern as it gets, but the story is as old as storytelling itself. The themes of friendship, loyalty, jealousy, class, and power. That's what drew me to the film. It had nothing to do with Facebook. So then he also said that he and the writer Ben were basically, Ben was researching for the book and Sorkin was researching for the movie at the same time. So he was writing the book and he was writing the movie at the same time. He was writing based off a book that wasn't done yet. So basically, whenever Ben found something from the book, he would text Aaron and Aaron would work it into his film script. So in a weird way, this is like a half original screenplay, half adapted screenplay, which is kind of weird to think, where the book and the movie are written together, which is an interesting way to view it. Mesrick would literally like text him, he would text him like 2 or 3 times and they'd get together. He'd go to Boston, they'd meet in New York, they compare notes, they share info. And he said he didn't see the book, the actual book itself, until Mesrick was done. He said he was 80% done with the screenplay by the time he read Mesrick's full book. Because Mesrick had like a 15-page like opening manuscript of a book, and he read the first 3 pages and said, I'll do it. So he said he was 80% done with the script by the time Mesrick was done with the book. And that's kind of crazy to think. So then casting happens in mid-2009. They said the Eisenberg and Garfield were the only choices for the roles. They cast them immediately. And the original choice to play Sean Parker was Jonah Hill. They wanted
Oh,
Jonah Hill to play Sean Parker. And what happened was Jonah Hill was really close, and Fincher said, I don't want you. Sorkin was lobbying for Jonah Hill, and Fincher said, I don't want Jonah Hill. He's too funny. And then they cast Justin Timberlake, who Sorkin didn't want, but Fincher did. That doesn't say why Sorkin didn't like Timberlake, but they don't have a lot of stories as to why certain people were cast. They said that Rooney Mara was sort of Fincher's like one off the back of this. He puts her in the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo because he fell in love with Rooney Mara because of her work on this. Armie Hammer, Josh Penn, Shelby Young, they were all basically auditioned and cast. Brenda Song, they said they got because of Sweet Life, which is weird. For whatever reason, someone saw her play London Tipton and they were like, Social Network. I don't know why.
that's actually insane to me. That is how do you watch Sweet Life of Zach and Cody or On Deck?
It would have been On Deck at this point.
Yeah, it would have been on. Well, yeah, it would have been.
They were filming the second season of The Sweet Life on Deck when they or the second season of The Sweet Life on Deck was coming out when they were filming The Social Network.
Fair. Well, but probably when they were casting it, maybe first season. But that's if you're watching.
The Social Network is filmed in 2009, which is when the second season of Sweet Life on Deck is coming out.
But it's probably getting casted before it's being filmed.
Sure.
So again, if you're watching the first or second season of Sweet Life on Deck, you're doing it really off the back of Zach and Cody.
I guess it's in October of 2009. They said Brenda Song was cast.
Fair. But anyway, regardless.
Then they add Dakota Johnson and Max Minghella. They said Max Minghella was recommended through producers. I'm gonna guess it's because it's Anthony's kid. But who knows? And Dakota Johnson was essentially a discovery. Like they auditioned her and got her, but which is weird because it's like I don't know. Dakota Johnson's also a famous person's kid, so it's like,
wait,
is she really a discovery? She's Don Johnson's daughter. You know that, right? Dakota Johnson's the daughter of Don Johnson.
I didn't realize that. That makes sense.
Yeah,
who's her mom? Is her mom also someone famous?
I'm not sure. I just know that's Don Johnson's daughter because like they've never worked together, or they recently did or something, and they did like interviews or something. I don't know. That's I don't know. Anyway, Eisenberg said,
Melanie Griffith is her mom.
Oh, that is even weirder and weirdly makes sense. In a weird way, Melanie Griffith and Don Johnson making Dakota Johnson is interesting. Even though I've gotten to be in some wonderful movies, this character seems so much more overtly insensitive in so many ways that seem more real to me in the best way. I don't often get cast as insensitive people, so it feels very comfortable, fresh, and exciting, as you never have to worry about the audience. Not that I worry about the audience. Anyway, it should just be the furthest thing for your mind. The Social Network is the biggest relief I've ever had in a movie. Then in 2010, it was mentioned that Rashida Jones would be in the film. They filmed mostly in Cambridge. That was Eisenberg.
Okay. That made sense. That's what I thought.
Yeah. Then they filmed mostly in Massachusetts. Harvard has turned down most requests for on-location filming. Do you know what movie caused that decision? This is the first time they let them film on Harvard in like decades. But because one movie ruined it for everyone.
Hold on.
It's a movie you don't like, and it's a movie that they said it caused significant physical damage to trees on campus.
Wouldn't be Animal House.
Nope.
I don't know. What is it?
It's 1970s Love Story. It is the movie that ruined filming at Harvard for everyone.
I mean, that's a crappy movie, so that makes sense.
It's kind of funny. They said that filming took place also on Kaiser and Wyman quadrangles in the Homewood campus of Johns Hopkins University, which is where they doubled for Harvard when they couldn't actually use Harvard. And then they said that Josh Pence would be the body double for Armie Hammer for the Winklevoss scenes. Do you know who Josh Pence is?
Is he related to Mike Pence?
No. Josh Pence has been in two films that I really love. In one of them in a very small part, and one of them in a very major part. One of them is in 2014, and one of them is in 2016.
And
Josh Pence has a bit part as Mia Dolan's boyfriend in La La Land, the one that she leaves for, or her boyfriend's brother, the one that they go to dinner with, when
okay.
she leaves her boyfriend. That's Josh Pence. Josh Pence most notably plays Bo Callahan in Draft Day.
Oh, it's that guy.
So he is the body double for Army Hammer in The Social Network. They would use split
Nobody
screen
came to his birth.
photography. And they said that his face was digitally grafted onto Pence's during post production. Pence was concerned with having no face time during the role, but after considerable musing, thought of the role as a no brainer. He also has a cameo appearance elsewhere in the film. They also sent the two actors to twin boot camp for 10 months to learn everything about the Winklevi.
That's
Um,
funny.
the Community Rowing Inc. had a casting call and tryout for 20 rowing extras for the rowing scenes. Fincher also hired the coach of Loyola Marymount to train Josh Pence and Army Hammer to row. But what's funny is Hammer needed the coaching. Pence did not because he rowed crew at Dartmouth College. Funny enough.
Well, what was he gonna do? Well, no one was showing up to his birthday.
Exactly. What you want to know what's funny? This will make you laugh. The indoor rowing scene was filmed in the indoor rowing tanks of BU, and they repainted it all to be Harvard colors. And
That's
then
really
it was announced. It was announced the summer 2010 that Reznor Ross would score the film, and the soundtrack was released leading up to it with a 5-track EP made available for download. White Stripes made a song called, or had their song "Ball and Biscuit" on it, and the Beatles song "Baby You're a Rich Man" was put at the end of the film. Both appear in various trailers for the film. Yeah, that is
Speaking of
basically
trailers,
it.
I want to talk about the awesome trailer for this movie.
Mhm.
One of the greatest, probably I will go so far as to say, maybe the greatest trailer for one of the greatest trailers for a drama movie, the greatest trailer for a true story movie. I will go that far. Because with the orchestral version of I'm a Creep and like just the montage of just Facebook things and then going into the actual film, I love it.
The first full-length trailer for the film debuted July 16th, 2010, playing the song "Creep," and the trailer was first shown in theaters prior to the film's inception. Dinner for Schmucks, Salt, Easy A, The Virginity Hit, and The Other Guys. If that doesn't tell you where we were at in the year 2010. Um, and then also, fun
Man,
fact:
Dinner for Schmucks, that was a movie that existed.
David Fincher and Steve Chaffin were recommended to use Keller House for the poster by Steven Soderbergh. Other films that they did in that same era that their work on the Social Network directly inspired their also stuff. They used the same format for the Social Network that they used for I'm Still Here, The Armstrong Lie, and The King's Speech. So the same production company designed The King's Speech and the Social Network posters, and I think that's kind of funny.
I will say, I think the more interesting fact is the I'm Still Here thing, because those two posters are actually very similar.
True. But yeah, I think that's just about everything I have for the production leading up to the Social Network.
Yeah, so I think
Oh, sorry, one more fun fact I think you'll actually like. The poster itself originally says you don't get to 300 million friends without making a few enemies. They would change the line to 500 million friends in anticipation of Facebook reaching 500 million users by the film's release.
that's fair. Yeah, let's just kind of talk about general performances and
Sure.
things, because we talk about the Eisenberg is just so perfect in this.
Yeah,
Like,
I think this is a hand meat glove casting for Jesse Eisenberg.
yeah, like I don't think he will never be better than
No.
he is in this movie, because this just feels like a role that is built for him. And it's interesting that he says that, because yeah, you kind of look at the stuff that comes before this, and really before Social Network, Jesse Eisenberg was almost kind of the discount Michael Cera, and then after the Social Network, it kind of flips. But before
True,
this,
and yeah,
yeah, no, he's doing
before the
the
Social
same like
Network.
sensitive, awkward boy shtick, and
Yeah, before the Social Network, he definitely plays either the like. I think the only time you can say he's kind of insensitive is in the Squid and the Whale, but that's everyone in that movie's insensitive. That's not like necessarily asking
I
any
mean,
of them.
he's sensitive, but he's still like, more. He's not as overtly like.
He's young. There's a difference. It's not like he's like.
Well, yeah, but I
It's not
also
like he's.
not. He's not as brash. He's not as abrasive. That's the word I'm looking for. He's not as like abrasive in the Squid and the Whale. Like he's a little obnoxious, but not directly abrasive.
Exactly. But I think that I don't know. I can see what he's saying. Before the social network, he's not really an overt asshole. He's
Yeah.
like awkward, but there's a difference. And then afterwards, you see him try really hard to not play insensitive again. Where he's like,
Mhm.
I don't want everything he plays is back to that, like, I'm a little awkward. Maybe he is a little insensitive, but he kind of like the end of the tour, he's not insensitive, he's awkward. American Ultra is actively trying to be anti social network of a role where he's like, I'm trying to be anxious and like and uptight and weird. And like then you get to like the art of self-defense where he once again is awkward but not insensitive. So I think the social network's the only time he really like threads the needle into the exact box of that part. And everyone kind of tries to keep putting him in that box, and he never I don't think he wants to do that again. I think you can tell he never wants to do this again unless
I
he's
think he
playing
doesn't want to. I think
differently.
he said it was so tough for him to play this because he essentially has to. That is his natural instincts. Is everything that he does in this movie are like his natural instincts and the stuff he's been fighting like his whole life because he, I think, has OCD. And so it
Right.
comes from like essentially everything that he does not want to do, he is doing in this movie, which is why it was like so difficult for him to play the part because he essentially had to break all the like good habits he had created for himself.
Yeah, and like yeah, I think there's a lot of like I think there's a couple times where it's like you could tell they cast him to play that part and then he finds a different angle. The most notable one for me is like they cast him as Lex Luthor. They wanted him to play Mark Zuckerberg as Lex Luthor, which I think would have been great. But I also think it's really interesting that he's like, no, fuck you. I'm gonna do this weird manic privileged white boy character that's not Lex Luthor, but I'm gonna do my own spin. And I not to do a BBS thing. Like I don't know, I don't hate it, but it's definitely not what we
I
thought of.
I wish we would have gotten the
I don't
Zuckerberg.
disagree. I don't disagree. I think that's what they wanted him to be, and I think he would have done that perfectly. I
Also,
also well,
like casting the fact that they were like so sure on Andrew Garfield, which like correct, he's brilliant in this movie, but
he
essentially
had
coming
done
off
a lot.
yeah, off the back of like nothing, like a
Parnassus. It's Parnassus. That's basically it.
Parnassus and Lions for Lambs are like the two, and that's it.
Yeah,
So like just
basically, yeah.
so and maybe he had like some stage work or something. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't think he had done Angels in America yet, which I
No.
think I think that's sort of his like big return to stage, and then wins a Tony and absolutely like knocks a home run on stage. Which I really want to see his Angels in America performance. There's a pro shot of it somewhere, and I don't know where to find it. But he's very good in this.
I want to talk about Justin Timberlake and Sean Parker because I
Yes.
did not know the Jonah Hill thing, and
Yeah, me either.
that is interesting to me. I do not think Jonah Hill would have been as good purely because Jonah Hill would not have sold the cool as well as Justin Timberlake does. I think that's the thing. Is Justin Timberlake has like the more manic, like weird stuff that Hill would have been great at, but like you need that the dinner with him and Mark and Eduardo, where he just comes in and you totally understand why Mark has been seduced by this guy.
Yeah. Like I don't think Jonah Hill could pull off the Golden Gate Bridge monologue. I just don't
No,
think he could. And I love Jonah Hill. And I think part of the reason why he gets Moneyball is probably because he didn't get this. I think that's very much like Sorkin being
it's a
like,
very
put him in.
Kasdan Costner here. I'm gonna make this up to you type of deal.
Yeah. And like I do think Jonah Hill is like a good fit for Sorkin dialogue.
Oh yeah,
Um, but that's the thing I think everyone in this is given some of the hardest Sorkin dialogue since The West Wing. And they all pick it up and run with it. Even Dakota Johnson in her one scene runs with it. Rooney Mara is probably the person in this movie who has like the least screen time, but the most Sorkin dialogue per to little screen time ratio ever. She comes in 2 scenes and smacks 2 home run scenes out of the park with that Sorkin dialogue. It's brilliant stuff from Rooney Mara.
I want to talk about how brilliant that opening scene is because it is one of the most brilliant openers ever.
Yeah.
And it's so brilliant how like we just set up the fact that Zuckerberg is on a different wavelength than everyone else, and we get things, just the way the dialogue is structured. Of we're talking about A, now we're talking about B, and now we're back to A. Is like so good, but also how like so many little things are set up. We get a mention of Eduardo. We get the final clubs. We get all these things that essentially just tee off Zuckerberg's motivations in the whole movie. I think it's brilliant.
Exactly. And I think that opening is like it's really hinging on Rooney Mara. Because I think Iceberg really comes in. He nails this. I think he was always going to nail this. He was the first choice for a reason. He comes in, crushes it. But I
Yeah,
think if he doesn't have the right dance partner in that scene, it falls apart.
that's
Absolutely.
true.
And I think Rooney Mara is just going blow for blow with Iceberg in that scene in a way that is like brilliant, to the point where like she's in two scenes, and I think she should have gotten a Best Supporting Actress nomination. I
I
think
would agree.
her impact on the film is so felt, despite really only being in it for maybe 5 minutes total. And I think she's incredible.
I
I think the other scene partner that he has a lot that goes blow for blow with him is Andrew Garfield. And while
Yes,
we already kind of touched a little bit on just his casting being weird, I think Garfield genuinely, I think we go back and forth. You say Asperger, I think Garfield. I think Garfield's the best performance in the movie. I think he comes in here and is just swinging haymakers every scene. And I mean, he has the moment of the movie for me at the
yeah.
very end, which I think is the best, maybe the best, one of the best endings in movie history, is just that final closer from where they do the diluted shares where it's like 0.03%, and just comes back with like, are you wired in now, asshole? Breaking the keyboard and breaking it. It's just obviously the scene where it's just, I'm not coming back for 30%, I'm coming back for everything. Which is like a great final closing bit. And I mean, also just the way he interacts with Timberlake in that scene too, where he looks at me, he's just like, "I'm sorry, my Prada's at the cleaners, along with my hoodie and my fuck you flip flops, you pretentious douchebag." Like I
I
think
love
Garfield
the
comes
way
in
he
and crushes it.
delivers pretentious douchebag. Like,
He
such
nails
a
it. He
great
creams
line.
it. And I think those three, if those three aren't on point, this movie doesn't work. If you don't have Eisenberg, Garfield, and Timberlake all firing the way they do, because Timberlake, like you said, absolutely nails that smarmy asshole, but also I am cool enough to get into whatever room I want. Where it's like people will let me in the room, they just don't like me.
Yeah,
Is the exact aura he has, and that's why like the Golden Gate Bridge monologue I think is just really fucking fantastic. Where he just comes and then the water under the Golden Gate Bridge is fucking cold, is so good. It's such a great button to that, and you can just see Iceberg entranced in that. So I really think it's those three and obviously Mara that just all come through, and those are my four. Like if those four performances don't work, this movie doesn't work. And all the like bit parts through it, where you have like Hammer and Minella. I'd say bit part, but they're not. Army Hammer's not a bit part. And Minella and Rashida Jones, and Dakota Johnson, who are all very famous people. Um, but at that time are not necessarily like besides Army Hammer, the very famous people that they are now, and they all step into that and they kill. Everyone is just killers in this. I think the lawyers are killers. I think Cy is so good as the lawyer that defends Zuckerberg. I think every single part in this is so perfectly cast throughout.
yeah, valid.
I
Um,
also think, just to touch on the editing one moment, I think the opening's great. I think the scene immediately following the opening titles is some of the best opening titles of all time. Where
that's
while you have the titles going, you literally have reference in the opening dialogue where it's like, yeah, they pick up buses and they take girls or whatever, and we see that happen in juxtaposition with Zuckerberg drunk at home being an asshole to Erica online, and just seeing the juxtaposition of college life that he's missing out of what he wants, and him working so hard to get it
well,
by
I think
without
it's
realizing it.
also, and it ties into the final line of the movie of "You're not an asshole, Mark. You're just trying so hard to be." It kind of is this echo effect of, yeah, these guys are the clear like frat boy douchebags, but like so are these guys. They
And
just,
they want to be.
yeah, but these guys are just as bad as the other guys. They just don't have the cool factor, and I think that's an
Right.
interesting angle of this
It
piece.
is interesting, and I think Sorkin's script. I haven't like read the opening. He wrote that bit as like cut to, cut to, cut to, cut to. The words "cut to" I think are in the screenplay more than any other words in the script. But it's. I think that opening is fantastic. Um, I'm trying to think if there's any other major thing we need to hit before we hit the aftermath, because the aftermath of this movie is also very important.
I think we
Um,
can just go to the aftermath.
Okay, so in 2009, the script was leaked online. Fun fact: in November 2009, Kevin Spacey, who is the executive producer of the film, said the Social Network is probably going to be a lot funnier than people might expect it to be, which is like a weird thing to say about it, but he's not wrong. The movie is actually very funny in a weird way.
Mhm.
And then they said the next bit. The next bit is the reaction that all the different founders have. Um, uh, Zuckerberg said to Oprah that the drama and partying in the film is mostly fiction, that he spent most of the past 6 years focusing, working hard, and coding Facebook. And that instead of making Facebook to go get girls, he made it because he enjoyed building things, and that the film accurately depicted his wardrobe, saying it's interesting the stuff that they focus on getting right. Like every single shirt and fleece they had in that movie is actually a shirt or fleece that I own. Dustin Moskovitz calls the film a dramatization of history. It's interesting to see my past rewritten in a way that emphasizes things that didn't matter, like the Winklevosses, who I've never met and had no part in the work we did to create the site over the past 6 years, and leaves out things that really did, like the many other people in our lives at the time who supported us in innumerable ways. Um, he said a lot of exciting things happened in '04, but we mostly just worked a lot and stressed out about things. The version in the trailer seems a lot more exciting. So I'm just going to choose to remember that we drank ourselves silly and had a lot of sex with co-eds, which is kind of a weird thing to point out. Eduardo Saber said the movie was clearly intended to be entertainment and is not a fact-based documentary, to which Sorkin replied, I don't want my fidelity to be the truth. I want it to be storytelling. What is the big deal about accuracy purely for accuracy's sake? And can we not have the true be the enemy of the good? Other people, like journalist Jeff Jarvis, called it a well-crafted but antisocial movie, which Sorkin did not like. And then there's a lot of people who have chimed in on what's true and what's not. Um, Harvard Law School professor Lawrence Lessig wrote in the New Republic that Sorkin's screenplay does not acknowledge the real villain of the story, which he said that the entitlement of Harvard undergraduates is completely missed by Sorkin, which is a weird thing to point out because I feel like it is.
Yeah.
But he
No,
also
that's
says,
the whole point of like the meeting with the dean.
right, and he says Sorkin has been upfront about the fact that there are fabrications aplenty lacing the story, but from the story as told, we certainly know enough to know that any legal system that would allow these kids to extort 65 million from the most successful business this century should be ashamed of itself. Did Zuckerberg breach his contract? Maybe. For which the damages are more like 650, not 65 million. Did he steal his trade secret? Absolutely not. Did he steal any other property? Absolutely not. The code for Facebook was his, and the idea of a social network is not a patent. It wasn't justice that gave the twins 65 million. It was just fear of a random and inefficient system of law. And Sorkin's like, that's not my call. Sorkin basically was like, you have issues with real life. That's not my issue. So Sorkin's gotten weird criticism for this movie over the years. The preliminary impact, it says here, just to read off of Facebook, basically a major hit off the front. He immediately, based on this, was attached to Steve Jobs, but we'll get to that later. At the close of the decade, it was recognized by Metacritic and many others as being the best film of the 2010s, or at least in the top 10. Metacritic ranked it the third overall behind Mad Max Fury Road and Moonlight. Esquire called it the best of the 2010s and the Citizen Kane for the internet era. Polygon called it the best of the decade. Quentin Tarantino called it the best film of the 2010s, singling out the script by Sorkin, whom he described as the greatest active dialoguist in film, which is a huge, huge compliment. The last big thing to mention is that in January of 2019, Aaron Sorkin revealed that he and producer Scott Rudin were developing a screenplay for a sequel, saying a lot of very interesting dramatic stuff has happened since the movie ends, and that there was indeed enough material to create a sequel. In the summer of 2019, Eisberg expressed his interest in proposing the sequel and said that he would sign on if Sorkin had a script. Sorkin is a genius, and if he chooses to write about something, I'll obviously be interested. In October 2020, a decade after the film's release, Sorkin announced that he would only write the script sequel if David Fincher returned as the director. Fincher has not commented, but they said that they are still actively developing the social network too. So
I'd be down for that.
Me too.
Anyway,
the last thing I think the last thing we want to talk about, which I think you have feelings on very much, is the film was a big awards hit. Major awards hit. The film was nominated for many films at the Academy Awards, including Best Sound Mixing, Best Original Score, Best Film Editing, Best Cinematography, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Actor for Eisenberg, Director for Fincher, and Best Picture. It walked away with just 3 for Score, Editing, and Adapted Screenplay for Sorkin. It lost Best Actor, Best Director, and Best Picture to The King's Speech for Firth, Hooper, and Best Picture overall to King's Speech, which came out a full year before The Social Network. Fun fact. So
I'm Tom Hooper. Isn't it just beautiful? I just make grayscale and everything looks like I pooed on it, and there's nothing really interesting going on. I just have a guy stuttering for 2 hours. Isn't it great? Isn't
I
it?
think it's a little harsh. I think The King's Speech does not deserve the Oscars it has, but I do like the movie. I think that Colin Firth is
Fine. It is.
I think Colin Firth. I think it's good.
Firth
I think
is
it's good.
Firth
I don't
is
think it's I'll push back and say I don't think it's unremarkable. I think Rush and Firth are both really good, like really good. I think Jeffrey Rush is really, really good.
Rush is as good as The King's Speech as Philip Seymour Hoffman is in Charlie Wilson's War. And if you're going to call Charlie Wilson's War bad, then you need to say the same thing about.
I actually disagree. I think Jeffrey Rush is actually much better than Hoffman is in Charlie Wilson's War.
Well,
I think Rush in the King's Speech
5 days a week.
Jeffrey Rush in the King's Speech might be.
You gotta give me that.
Sure. Without having seen Shine in its entirety, so I reserve to change this opinion. Of the movies he's been nominated for an Academy Award, I think The King's Speech is the best performance he's been nominated for an Academy Award for. So that includes Wills and Shakespeare in Love. But I really love him in The King's Speech. I do think that there's a lot to like about The King's Speech. I think there's a lot about friendships in that. I think there's a very sweet story there. I do think it is directed not great. I do think Tom Hooper's win is an abomination as a director. I think it's shot pretty terribly. I do think there are elements that are great. I think that Desplat's score is really good. I think there's actually a lot of really clever and fun sound design in the movie. I think that Firth and Rush and even Helen Bonham Carter are all giving really good performances. But this it is not Best Picture. It's not Best Picture.
It's not. It's not.
It's not. But I don't think it's like a bad movie. I don't
think it's a bad movie. It's a 3-star movie.
I go 3.5, but it's like I like it. It's fine. But yeah, that's the big thing that we'll get into maybe another day, another time, another place. If we ever do a Damien Chazelle miniseries, we'll do the same thing with Moonlight and La La Land because those two movies are just so inextricably linked together because of the Oscars.
Anyway, I think we can pretty much close out the show.
Yes. So then next week, you guys will get to hear us talk Moneyball, where we have two very different perspectives. Caleb Bowman, a film fan who does not know what a ball is, and I, who is not a baseball fan, but at least understands enough about it to talk about baseball. Maybe what we could do is bring on a baseball expert. If Cody Newberry wants to come on and talk Moneyball, I think that would be really fun. So,
I don't think he will say yes, but I would like.
If he doesn't say yes, then we have a backup baseball expert who also co-hosts the same podcast with him, called Thomas Scully, who I think.
I was going to say Scott Harvey.
Scott Harvey would also be great. We have a lot of great options.
Movies, so I think then we essentially get the version of Cody Newberry that will still be very positive on the movie.
Sure. I think we can get any of those options for Moneyball. We're just spitballing out loud. But if any of those guys want to be on next week to talk Moneyball with us, that would be great. Or all three of you. We just have a 5-person.
None of them are watching this show.
No, but we will reach out to all of them and be like, hey, want to talk Moneyball with us next week? But Moneyball is going to be super fun, and there's a really great story behind that movie that we'll cover next week. And our Charlie Wilson's War episode, I think, was really great. So watch that tomorrow when it comes out. So
okay. Goodbye. Love you.
Okay.